I'm going to take a look at how to make a fixture to make these handholds in a hive body, which are very professional looking and cut with just an ordinary table saw. They're fairly easy to do once you have the fixture. And I'm going to show how to do that. We're going to be working with just a normal table saw. This is a Craftsman saw from probably a couple of decades old. But the first thing we need to look at is the saw blade is not going to cut sideways, and when we make these we're going to have to move this in sideways. So what we need to do is replace the blade with a side cutting blade like this. This one's double-sided, so you can use either side. They also have some that are open and cut out in the center. So what we're going to do is have to take this blade off and put that one on, and once we do that we'll be able to use the fixture. Now, one problem with these blades is that although this has a 5/8 inch shaft, the blade has a 1 1/4 inch hole for the arbor. So I actually ordered this off of eBay, and at the same time I ordered a washer which is the same thickness as the blade with a 1 1/4 inch OD and a 5/8 inch high D that I insert in here that allows me to put the blade on and it stays centered, and with the collar that goes on it actually is able to hold the blade without any trouble. Okay, we have now swapped the blade out, and we have the side cutting blade in here. Now some people use a dado blade, but since the ends will only cut about 1/10 of an inch, that requires multiple passes, which not only increases the wear and tear on the equipment, makes things slower, but also increases the chance of messing up and gouging your wood or something by accident. The next thing we're going to do is put the cradle on, which is just this item here. Has 2 runners on the bottom that slip right in these slots, and what we want to do is I have a center line here for the exact center between these 2 ends that I want to put right on the center line of the blade, which is right there. Once I do that, then that's set. Now I normally will take a C-clamp and put it here and here in order to hold it when I'm making a bunch, but since I'm only going to be making one, I'm really not going to need to do that. We also have on the sides here, we have 2 runners on the cradle that the sled rides up and down on, and we have a release here which is actually made from a piece that I got from Home Depot, which was actually made for going up on a sliding glass door or a closet folding door that has a actually had a wheel on the end of it that I had to cut off, and I glued a knob on the end of it to make a release here, which we'll show how that works in just a minute. Okay, and then the last piece to this is the actual sled, and the sled sits right down in here and slides up and down this piece here at between a 25 and a 30 degree angle. This one's actually at a 27 to about 27 to 28 degree angle here where it slides down. I found that to be optimum as far as how high the handhold is. A lot of the ones you see where they tilt the blade, since it's only an 8-inch blade, when you tilt the blade, not enough of it sticks up to where you can actually go in as deep as you want, unless you set the angle at a much shallower angle like 13 degrees, which gives you a handhold that's about twice as long as really looks nice. But what we have is this comes down and then it hits that. If you pull this out, then it'll go the rest of the way down. Now the 2 most important things on the sled are, the most important thing on the sled is this piece here, which when you go and you set your piece of wood in there to cut, let me see if I can grab a piece of wood here. This is not as wide as I really need. But anyway, when you set a piece of wood in here, you push that up against that, and the distance from that to the actual blade, saw blade, or side cutting blade, this distance here ends up being the distance that you want from the top to the very top of the handhold. And this is actually set for 2 inches here. The other stop that is important is this one here, which sets how far in we go along with that to get your 2 inches. Now, there's one nice thing here that's important, and that is when you look at a handhold, it's best if the last 0.4, 0.5 inches of the handhold flattens out as opposed to continuing on to get deeper. That allows you to give you a better place to hold your fingers and everything, and that's how the professional ones are done. And that's done by making it so the sled actually bottoms out right there. But if you notice, we have about 3/10 of an inch between the sled and this stop here. So the last 3/10 of an inch, instead of going down the slope, it now is going horizontally to cut that horizontal section on the handle. And since this is 3/10 of an inch, and this is actually I believe this blade is a 3/16, which is about 200,000ths of an inch. Then the two together give me about a 1/2 inch flat spot. Now, before we start, we're going to need to go ahead and put the sled in, pull out the thing to hold it, let it bottom out, and set this to how deep we want the handhold to be. In this case, 6/10 of an inch. Okay, and then adjust this until we're cutting right at 6/10 of an inch deep, and that'll give us the depth that we want. Once we do that, then it's just a matter of putting the wood in and doing the cut. Now, if we're cutting the front and back, we put these in, which will center the shorter piece, and if we're not, then we don't use it. Actually, this is a scrap piece of lumber that I'm going to show this with, so I'm going to actually shim this with a couple of just 3/4 inches pieces of lumber here, just to show how it works. Once we have this all set up, and this is basically resting on our release, which I got made from a couple pieces I got from Home Depot. It's a piece that goes up into the door for a sliding glass door thing that goes in the top with a knob glued on the end. And the other thing is we have our stop here and we have our stop there. We're going to push that up against the stop. And as you can see, we now have us a beautiful little handhold here where we have about a 1/2 inch where it stays level and then it drops right out. And this is almost exactly the same dimensions as a handhold from one of the companies that you have like Dedant or Kelly. And it's very easy to cut, one pace, and it comes out picture perfect every time.